Imagine the one person who is supposed to love you unconditionally, the person who should shield you from harm, becoming the very source of your nightmares. A father, the very symbol of protection, turning into something monstrous. Today, we're diving into the harrowing case of David Langley, a seemingly devoted father whose dark secrets shattered his family and horrified a nation. This is a story of trust betrayed, a crime so unthinkable that it left an entire community in shock. Stay with us as we unravel the chilling details of a father's sin. David Langley was a well-respected businessman in his hometown of Cedar Ridge, Ohio. To outsiders, he seemed like the epitome of success, a man who had it all. He owned a thriving real estate company, drove a sleek black sedan, and lived in a sprawling suburban home on Maplewood Drive. His wife, Susan Langley, worked as a nurse at the local hospital, balancing her demanding career with raising their two children, Jessica Langley 16 and Ethan Langley 10. Together, they appeared to be the quintessential American family. But beneath this polished exterior lay a toxic undercurrent of control, manipulation, and fear. Those closest to David described him as someone obsessed with maintaining appearances. He demanded perfection from everyone around him, especially his family. Any deviation from his rigid expectations was met with harsh criticism or even anger. Jessica, a bright and ambitious teenager, bore the brunt of her father's controlling behavior. From a young age, she excelled academically and athletically, earning accolades for her achievements in school sports and debate club. But no matter how hard she tried, nothing ever seemed good enough for David. Her grades, her performance, her choices, they were always scrutinized and criticized. Over time, Jessica grew increasingly distant from her father, retreating into herself and finding solace only among her closest friends. For years, Susan noticed the growing tension between her husband and daughter but chose not to intervene. Like many victims of domestic abuse, she rationalized David's behavior, believing that things would get better if she just gave him space or handled situations differently. Meanwhile, Ethan, still too young to fully understand what was happening, felt caught in the middle, torn between loyalty to his father and concern for his sister. No one outside the family truly understood the extent of the dysfunction within the Langley household. Friends and neighbors admired the family's outward success, unaware of the silent battles being fought behind closed doors. It was the evening of March 14, 2019, when everything came to a head. That day, Jessica had finally reached her breaking point. For weeks, she had been planning her escape. She confided in her best friend, Megan Carter, about her intentions to leave home once she turned 18 in just a few months. "I can't stay here anymore," she told Megan during one of their late-night phone calls. "He's suffocating me. I need to breathe." When she returned home that afternoon, Jessica found her father waiting for her in the living room. He had discovered her college applications hidden away in her bedroom drawer. Each application listed schools far from Cedar Ridge, places where Jessica could start fresh and build a life free from his influence. "What do you think you're doing?" David demanded, slamming the stack of papers onto the coffee table. His voice was cold, calculated, leaving no room for argument. Jessica stood her ground, her resolve hardened by years of suppression. "I'm leaving, Dad," she said firmly, meeting his gaze without flinching. "You've controlled every aspect of my life for long enough. It's time for me to make my own decisions." Her defiance ignited something primal in David. Years of pent-up frustration and resentment boiled over, fueling a rage that neither of them could have anticipated. What followed was a heated argument that escalated quickly, spilling out of the living room and into Jessica's bedroom upstairs. Ethan, playing video games in his room across the hall, heard the shouting and froze. At first, it sounded like any other fight between his parents and sister: loud voices, slammed doors, threats exchanged in hushed tones. But then came the sound of furniture crashing, glass shattering, and screams that made his blood run cold. Terrified, Ethan locked himself inside his room, pressing his ear against the wall to listen. By the time Susan arrived home from her shift at the hospital, the house was eerily silent. She called out for her family, her voice echoing through the empty halls. When she reached Jessica's bedroom, she found her worst fears realized. Her daughter lay motionless on the floor, surrounded by broken picture frames and overturned furniture. David sat slumped against the bed, his face pale and expressionless, his hands covered in blood. Susan's scream pierced the night, alerting the neighbors, who immediately dialed 911. Within minutes, police cars and ambulances flooded the quiet cul-de-sac, their lights casting an unnatural glow over the scene of devastation. The Cedar Ridge Police Department responded swiftly to the call, arriving at the Langley residence within moments. Officers entered the home cautiously, weapons drawn, prepared for anything. What they encountered was beyond comprehension. David Langley was arrested on the spot, taken into custody without resistance. During initial questioning, he remained eerily calm, offering little more than monosyllabic responses. "I don't know what happened," he muttered repeatedly, though the evidence spoke volumes. As investigators combed through the crime scene, they uncovered disturbing signs of a prolonged struggle. Bloodstains smeared across the walls, shattered pieces of furniture scattered throughout the room, and personal belongings strewn everywhere, all pointed to a violent confrontation. Autopsy results later confirmed that Jessica had suffered multiple blunt force injuries before ultimately succumbing to severe trauma to the head. Over the following weeks, detectives pieced together the events leading up to the tragedy. Text messages between Jessica and Megan provided critical insight into the victim's state of mind prior to her death. In one message sent just hours before the incident, Jessica wrote, "He won't let me go. If I try, I don't know what he'll do." These words became chillingly prophetic as the investigation unfolded. The trial of David Langley gripped the nation, drawing widespread media attention and sparking intense public debate. Prosecutors painted a portrait of a man consumed by possessiveness and jealousy, unable to accept his daughter's desire for independence. They presented testimony from Jessica's teachers, coaches, and peers, all of whom described her as a kind-hearted, intelligent young woman trapped in a toxic environment. Defense attorneys argued that David acted in a moment of temporary insanity, claiming that years of stress and financial pressures had pushed him over the edge. However, forensic psychologists testified that David exhibited classic traits of narcissistic personality disorder, marked by grandiosity, lack of empathy, and extreme control issues. The jury ultimately rejected the defense's claims, finding David guilty of first-degree murder after deliberating for less than 12 hours. Sentencing took place several months later, with Judge Elizabeth Reynolds handing down a verdict of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As the judge read her decision, Susan Langley addressed the court, delivering a powerful victim impact statement. "My daughter deserved better," she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "She deserved to live freely, to dream big, to chase her passions. Instead, she died at the hands of the person who should have protected her most." The murder of Jessica Langley sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community of Cedar Ridge. Once regarded as a safe, idyllic town, residents now grappled with the unsettling realization that danger could lurk anywhere, even within the walls of a loving home. A candlelight vigil held in Jessica's honor drew hundreds of mourners, including classmates, teachers, and neighbors who had known her throughout her life. Speeches delivered during the ceremony celebrated her kindness, intelligence, and unwavering determination. One attendee, a former teacher named Mrs. Thompson, recalled how Jessica often stayed after class to help struggling students catch up on their work. "She had such a generous spirit," Mrs. Thompson said. "Even amidst all the challenges she faced at home, she never stopped caring about others." For Ethan, the youngest member of the Langley family, the trauma proved overwhelming. Now 10 years old, he struggled to process the loss of his sister and the transformation of his father into someone unrecognizable. Therapy sessions became a crucial part of his healing journey, helping him confront the memories of that fateful night and rebuild a sense of safety in his world. Susan, meanwhile, emerged as a fierce advocate for victims of domestic violence. Drawing strength from her pain, she founded a non-profit organization called Freedom Beyond Fear, dedicated to raising awareness about emotional and psychological abuse within families. Through workshops, support groups, and educational campaigns, Susan worked tirelessly to empower others to recognize the warning signs and seek help before it was too late. Local law enforcement agencies also implemented new training programs aimed at addressing cases involving coercive control and invisible forms of abuse. Officers learned to look beyond physical scars, recognizing that emotional manipulation could be just as damaging and deadly as physical violence. A father is meant to be a protector, a guardian, a guiding light. Yet, in the case of David Langley, these roles were grotesquely distorted. Rather than fostering growth and nurturing independence, he sought to dominate and control, viewing his children's autonomy as a threat to his authority. Jessica's story serves as a stark reminder of the insidious nature of emotional and psychological abuse. Unlike bruises or broken bones, the wounds inflicted by words and actions are often invisible, making them harder to detect and address. By the time others become aware of the problem, it may already be too late. Moreover, this case highlights the importance of listening to victims and believing their stories. Too often, societal norms discourage individuals from speaking out against those they love, fearing judgment or retaliation. But staying silent only perpetuates the cycle of abuse, allowing predators like David Langley to operate unchecked. David Langley will never walk free again, but no amount of justice can bring back the bright, promising life of Jessica Langley. Her story is a tragic testament to the importance of recognizing the signs of abuse before it's too late. If you or someone you know is in danger, reach out. There is help, there is hope, and there is a way out. Whether through trusted friends, family members, or professional organizations, resources exist to support those trapped in abusive situations. Let Jessica's memory inspire action, not despair. Let her legacy remind us that even in the darkest moments, courage and resilience can shine through, lighting the path toward freedom and healing. If you found this story impactful, please like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime cases that need to be heard. And remember, the best way to honor victims like Jessica is to ensure that their stories are never forgotten.